Dahlia's banner is just a few days from leaving. I wanted to make another video like this, mainly just urging break players to really go for her, because if you're a break player and you don't really go for her, you're going to be doing yourself a pretty big disservice going forward through the game's lifespan. As I mentioned, already did kind of make a video similar to this when she did come out, so this video is kind of going to be serving a similar purpose, while also functioning kind of like a final impressions. So of course, first starting off, let's first talk about the Dahlia's kit herself, dissecting what parts are good and what is the real crucial thing she does for these break teams that is so valuable that makes her a must-have. For break characters, the Dahlia actually has a really stacked kit. She increases weakness break efficiency by 50% for your team, which is going to be really important anyways, since she did also function as someone to sometimes kick off a Ron May, depending if you're doing a sustain or sustainless run, and that extra weakness break efficiency is very important. She provides the ability to convert damage to super break. She has the ability to increase the team's break effect as well. Unfortunately for that, it's a bit iffy because you need a sustain to constantly refresh it, and honestly, as break as a team is usually best ran sustainless, so even though this trait really promotes you to run a sustain, oftentimes sustainless is just better because of how break works. You know, you're making the enemies not attack too much, they're in the broken state, and you're still better off just running into support in that case to make up for that and even more. So that's why I did mention with Ruan Mei, even though she replaces her on the teams, which she does, when you do sustain this, instead you can just throw Ruan Mei instead of the sustain. You don't worry about this, but Ruan Mei also can somewhat increase break effect just a little bit, but she provides all those other buffs that helps it out. But that is there. If you're running a sustain or maybe even doing a super break link shot, then you just constantly will refresh it. To the characters that are able to weakness implant, can increase their speed by 30%, which is a lot of speed. Specifically for Firefly, also has the additional toughness reduction that can be dealt alongside the energy recovery if you know you're outside of ultimate for whatever reason. The wilt state, which will now decrease every enemy's defense, which is one of the best ways to make break characters do more damage, assuming you're not already overcapped. The ability to implant your partner and Dahlia's weaknesses onto the enemies, which is so good. It really makes that whole niche that Fuke had of, you know, you're able to lower regardless of toughness type at like 50% of the value. It makes that kind of obsolete because now you can just straight up implant it and get the full effect. Exceptionally good for the characters that were not able to weakness implant. So Bootail was the only one who could, and also Firefly. Firefly was the most consistent one. Bootail was able to do it through his ultimate, but not always would you have it up. But now with rotating your ultimates properly with the Dahlia, you can have permanent physical weakness on those characters. On top of that, because the Dahlia is fire and she's able to implant her own weakness, which would be fire, for the characters that are not Firefly or Lingxia or Himiko, whatever, you are able to run Forge, which is the best in slot break set that other characters wouldn't utilize fully because they can't implant fire weakness or they're just not fire, so you wouldn't take them into fire weakness battles, or you'd at least just have to wait till you get one of that. But because the Dahlia is able to implant fire, you're able to get full uptime on that set, so that's even more stats there. And then the most important part, the ability to convert to super break damage without actually breaking enemies. This is what sets Dahlia, besides obviously she already has a lot going for her. All those buffs I mentioned, especially with the weakness implant stuff, is insane, but this part is what really sets her apart. This allows your break characters to consistently be dealing enough damage throughout the battle rather than just when enemies are broken. When enemies are broken, that's obviously when they're still going to take the most damage because everything is within its fullest effect. But before the Dahlia, you were kind of focused to break them and then do damage because that's how the archetype was intended. It's called break. You break the enemies to do damage. Unfortunately, with how the devs handled break, it just didn't go well and the team was just kind of getting gutted. They didn't really get any updates either. The Dahlia was the next update after Fugue, almost a year, actually, yeah, a year later. So with the break team, just like everyone else, they had to deal with HP inflation, but what break also had to deal with was the fact that toughness bars were also inflated as well. So they had to do more toughness damage to break enemies, and all their damage would be backloaded to that. When they did break, and if you had solid investment, the damage was still fine to this day, but the amount they were doing after the enemy targets were broken were what characters would just do after your buffs were active, which would be after like the first turn, really. Not only that, but with enemies also getting a lot faster, they were able to run through your weakness breaks a lot quicker. So even if you had like the Ruan Mei extension and also be able to re-break with Fugue and all that, they were able to recover a lot quicker than they used to be, especially with how fast Hule is able to act and stuff and how much speed that guy gets. But that's just like one of the examples. A lot of cases now, enemies can act really fast, so they can recover out of that, and once they're out of that, you have to break them again for the little bit you're not doing damage. It was worse when they would refresh really quickly and you needed someone to implant the weakness. Maybe you took them into a battle that didn't actually have the right weakness, so you'd have to rely on the Buto ultimate implant, all that kind of stuff, or maybe you were really just relying on the Fugue being able to lower the toughness regardless of type. In those cases, you really were just screwed. It was going to take you forever to finally break them, and then once you did, then you would be able to finally do your damage again. Nonetheless, all this was going against break, and what does the Dahlia do to fix that? Now you're able to convert the super break anytime. So now your damage is no longer fully backloaded until after you have broken them. The moment your buffs are up, you kind of just function as a regular DPS now, you're able to just convert to super break and do your damage right there. Once you break, that big hit is going to do the most damage, and then you can do the most damage after they're broken. Yes, that still stays the same, but it's really the fact that she enables you to do damage throughout the entire battle rather than just the time the enemies are broken. Unfortunately, break does lose its identity with this, but really this was like the only solution that I could think of even for break to even have some form of competing. The Dahlia was a very much needed, also known now from people, and honestly me included now, I was a bit iffy on this, but now I will say it, the Kafka of break. She really just is the Kafka of break. At least until someone does what she does, but like, you know, better. But even then, you can really combine both of them, and then it's like you get an even more effect to that, so they can do more. So it's really like the Kafka situation. With Kafka, if they made a better Kafka, you could just run them together and constantly have them proc each other's dots, with Hycelines applying the dots as well. So if they're fast, then boom, you get multiple procs. In this case, you would just get a bigger instance of super break conversion, maybe even more toughness, because the Dahlia herself also is able to significantly impact your toughness reduction abilities, because she has access to a follow-up attack, good toughness herself, her ultimate's AoE, her skill is at least blast, so she can also help you a lot with lowering toughness. Her weakness implant stuff is just game-changing as well, since it's also to every enemy that is really being hit, and then if you have E2, then even more insane. Which, another thing, is her vertical investment, her E1, S1, E2, all really good. So, on top of all the stuff that she has in her base kit, her vertical investment is also insane. This character is really going to be the reason break characters at a lower sided investment, because obviously like an E2 full break team can still somewhat clear, not even somewhat, can relatively clear pretty frequently. They're probably still going to do well, but the Dahlia on top of this is going to make those E0 clears, maybe max E1 clears go on for like the entirety of 4.x. Pretty much the Dahlia is just too valuable for people that use break to not get her. She's on every single break team. If anytime you ever want to get into a break team, she is going to be on the team, and she should be the priority. Honestly, you should pull her before the DPS. There's very few days until her banner is gone, so I did just want to make this video again to urge people that are break players, or if you just plan on getting into the archetype at all, whether you're using Firefly mainly where she is best, Boot Hill, Rappa unfortunately she isn't like as great as opposed to the others. I think everyone else got a bigger benefit, but Rappa still, Himiko, even in Pure Fiction, wherever for Himiko, and then especially like main hyper carry Linksha, even if you're gonna do the whack stuff like break Anoxa or something, like the Dahlia is just there. She is the equivalent of the taxpayer. She will do your taxes if you're a break player. From all the testing I've done with every single break DPS, she just by far increases their potential so much. Low cycle cost with Firefly, even Boot Hill, even Rappa nowadays, they all can just perform so well, and then especially with the enemies sometimes having weakness log, like the current MLC Sam until it opens up, or sometimes in just any boss really. If there's ever more weakness locked enemies, which there will be, she helps you bypass that, because if you are weakness locked until they open that or you deal with the mechanic, which can take some time, you're gonna do no damage. With the Dahlia, you are now gonna do good damage. Any situation, there is just no case, any time I would not recommend you to pull the Dahlia if you are a break player. So again, I'm urging you to pull the Dahlia. From all my testing, there is just no way I would ever imagine using a break team without the Dahlia anymore. It's just genuinely not worth it. And then there could be another case where there's just no break character that releases for support for a long time, just like how there was for this. And in that case, the Dahlia is going to be the reason that team would stay afloat to at least clear in the endgame modes. Of course, it's going to get harder as the time goes on. The same is for any team, but the Dahlia is going to be the reason the team is able to clear for a lot longer. The lower cost they can do now, the less you would have to invest later, because if they have to still do high cost now, then of course you would need even more later. But because they can do such low cost clears right now, it's going to be even better going forward. Once again, if you are interested in going into the Dahlia, what the fuck did I just say? Honestly, true though. If you are interested in getting into break, that's what I meant. You either have the teammates and you want to get into it now and you're just holding off last second for some reason, or you plan on getting into it at some point, maybe not exactly now, or maybe you're even wanting to do like Linksha main carry DPS, but you don't know if that's going to be sufficient on its own. Any case, any way that involves break, pull the Dahlia. You have a few days as I'm uploading this video, like 3 days maybe. You don't know when she'll rerun. Hopefully it'll be quickly for people that maybe couldn't get her or just got unlucky. But in any case, pull the Dahlia. But that does bring this video to a close. Kind of final impressions, not really, because I'm not talking about her too much for my own personal view. I'm just talking about why she's so good and why she is so needed for these break teams, what she does, why she lets it stay afloat. The only final impressions I'm kind of having is like, yeah, this character is insane for break. From the amounts I've tested, yeah, again, I cannot imagine not using the Dahlia on those teams. It's actually insane how big of a difference it is. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other types of style content. Check the description to join the Discord and check out my archive channel, and I'll see you later. I don't know how many seconds of your time I just wasted. Anyway, see ya.